Hello horror fans, it's the new year, so that means it's time once again for me to run through my list of favourite horror films from the last 12 months. As always, I've kept it to under 10 titles, and my decisions are based purely on how much I personally enjoyed these. Also, as I've not seen every single horror movie that came out last year, my list of choices might be a little bit arbitrary, but anyway. In no particular order, the first in my list of films of 2013 is Gangsters, Guns and Zombies, a hilarious horror comedy which was kind of a bizarre cross between Reservoir Dogs and Return of the Living Dead. This concerns a group of small-time criminals that are forced to survive on the road when a zombie outbreak scuppers their getaway plans following a bank heist. There were some great gags and some real laugh-out-loud moments as the film follows the gang's many pitfalls as they try to stay one step ahead of the undead, trying to escape with their loot. If you like Cockneys vs Zombies, you should get a kick out of this one, as it definitely had a similar vibe. Next in the list we have The Purge, starring Ethan Hawke. A very grim and disturbing story set in the near future where for one night of the year all crime is legal across America. Now, the film was marketed as an action movie, but it was really more of a psychological horror about the darker side of human nature, showing what people can become when there are no consequences to your actions, and the lengths that other people will go to just to defend their families, as one household find themselves under siege from a group of young psychopaths. A very good film, but again very dark and disturbing. And following on from the theme of home invasions, my next film is You're Next. Sort of Home Alone meets Panic Room in this tense action thriller about a wealthy family that are targeted by a group of masked killers at their remote country mansion. Fortunately, one of their son's new girlfriends happens to be a hardened survivalist who knows a thing or two about military training and sets about turning the tables on the killers as they attempt to enter the house. The film was quite violent and bloody in places, though these scenes were offset with a huge dash of black humour in places and overall proved to be extremely entertaining. Now, my next choice in my list of films of the year might be a little controversial, as I've decided to include Texas Chainsaw 3D. More youths get sliced and diced in loving detail down in rural Texas after a girl inherits an old mansion, only to find someone nasty lurking in the cellar. Well, isn't that always the case in horror movies? Ignoring the remakes and most of the original sequels, with a plot that follows directly on from the original 1974 film, I thought this was a really fun popcorn film, despite being fraught with anachronisms. I'll freely admit that the film had its many faults, but if all you want from a movie is to watch a maniac with a chainsaw hacking people to pieces, then you really can't go wrong. Plus I like the way that it poked fun out of the Saw films, which is never a bad thing. And speaking of maniacs, the next film I've picked to be in this year's list is Maniac, featuring Elijah Wood, in a distinctly un-Hobbit-like role, about a disturbed young man with an unhealthy obsession with mannequins who goes around scalping women. Obviously this was a remake of the old 1980s film, and to be fair, I still prefer the original, but it's still a pretty grim and disturbing tale, and I like what they tried to do with this, as the film tries to show more of what's going on inside the killer's mind, being filmed almost entirely from a first-person perspective, which was kind of refreshing in this era of highly polished teen slasher movies. My next choice of film is substantially different to the other movies in the list thus far, and may raise a few eyebrows as to its inclusion. It's not really a horror, but it is close enough for me. Machete Kills, Robert Rodriguez's homage to the grindhouse films that played grimy American cinemas and drive-ins during the 60s and 70s. I was a huge fan of the original 2010 film and found this sequel to be just as much fun, although it was extremely weird in places, as we see our titular hero taking on a Mexican arm dealer who has a bomb wired to his heart. Completely bizarre and totally over the top, the film was tremendous fun, with Danny Trejo doing what he does best, and featuring an all-star cast in completely offbeat roles, most notably Mel Gibson, who puts in an outrageous performance as one of the bad guys, and Lady Gaga, who plays an assassin. Again, I thought it was great fun, and I just hope they get the third film made. My next film is another bizarre inclusion, and again one that might cause some debate, which is The World's End. Now, this film got included as I was a huge fan of Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, and I instantly fell in love with this third outing from Simon Pegg, Nick Frost and Edgar Wright. In much the same way that Shaun of the Dead parodied zombie movies, this was obviously meant to be a homage to the 50s sci-fi films like Invaders from Mars or Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The film being about a group of middle-aged former school friends who visit their old hometown to relive their misspent youth, only to find that the people now there are not who they appear to be. There's a few gags that they carried over from the previous movies, and there's a few familiar faces making an appearance, though I wasn't too sure about the ending, which did seem a little bit downbeat for what was supposed to be a comedy, but overall I really enjoyed this. Speaking of parodies, this brings us swiftly to the penultimate film in my list of movies of the year, which is the epically corny Battle of the Damned, starring Dolph Lundgren. Oh yes, now this one has only just come out on disc here, but I had the pleasure of viewing it at a horror film festival the other month and thoroughly enjoyed it, as did the other audience members who were laughing uncontrollably throughout. Now all you really need to know is that the film features Dolph Lundgren, an army of robots and a city full of zombies. The rest of the picture sort of paints itself. Cheerfully aping the Resident Evil films, this was honestly the most fun I'd had watching a film in ages. I mean, if you can't enjoy a movie that's got Dolph Lundgren and a bunch of robots shooting up a city full of zombies, then you're obviously a little bit dead inside. So, finally, we come to my personal choice of horror film of the year. Now, it was a bit of a tough call, this one, and as with previous years, the film that stood out for me the most may cause some debate, but my personal choice for horror film of 2013 is The Bay! Barry Levinson's ecological horror about a small coastal resort whose water supply is contaminated by a parasitic outbreak, which infects the locals and causes the authorities to seal off the town. Now, despite its low budget and being in the style of one of those found footage type of films like Blair Witch Project, I was extremely impressed with this one. It made a good job of building up the tension as people suddenly started falling ill, and then showing the chaos as the local authorities struggled to cope as more and more cases developed. Obviously with its low budget, you don't actually see things like the National Guard coming into town in their hazmat suits, which are instead referred to as happening off camera, but overall I really enjoyed it. It was also definitely not a film for the squeamish, particularly if you dislike creepy crawlies, as this one was bound to make your skin crawl. Just Google the term isopod to see what I'm talking about. And that brings us to the end of my list of films for 2013. One other film I would like to recommend that you keep an eye out for, which should be coming out later this year, is the zombie movie Death Walks. If you subscribe to my channel, you'll have probably seen the trailers and features I've posted about this film. Now, obviously I've yet to see it myself, but I'm going to recommend it basically because I appear in it as a zombie in a couple of scenes. Plus, if the trailer's anything to go by, then I think it's going to be pretty damn awesome, even if I do say so myself. So be sure to keep an eye out for that one when it comes out, and be sure to stay tuned to my channel and my website for more info on it. Anyway, that's all for this year. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed my New Year's video, so please be sure to rate, comment and subscribe. I do have more review videos in the pipeline. It's just that I'm struggling to find the time to film and edit them, as well as keep my website updated, owing to a distinct lack of free time due to my day job, but I'm hoping to have more videos done soon. So until then, be sure to check out my website for more reviews and recommendations. We're also on Facebook and Twitter, links to which are in the bar below. Thanks again for watching, and I hope you all have a very happy horror-filled 2014.